Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dan and I'm here to bring you another FPL video. In this one, we're going to be looking at my team selection ahead of the double game week, which is game week 29. The deadline's fast approaching on us after an international break, so I hope you guys enjoyed the rest or just took some time out from FPL. It definitely helps the mental health because I know it can be quite stressful at times. But we're back again to talk all things last game week, all things this game week, especially talking about hits, talking about my possible transfer options, and just in general, as I say, trying to provide as much value to you as possible to help you through this game week. So if you do enjoy the content, guys, first things first, let's smash a like on that button below. But let's jump into how we got on, first of all, in game week 28. Now, all things said and done, it was 52 points for me, a slight red arrow from 90k to 91k. So can't realistically complain at that, especially after getting essentially this coin flip of a captaincy choice completely wrong. If I would have captained Saka, I don't know where I would be, but I absolutely would have been in green arrow territory. Maybe even like a 30k push upwards of maybe 60k, something like that. But yeah, absolutely just on the wrong end of another 50-50 this week, unfortunately. So congratulations first and foremost to those that did put the armband and faith in Saka. I think I maybe convinced a few people to captain Kane, as my mini league definitely reflected that. The top maybe 10 or 15 people certainly put the armband on the Englishman. And to be honest with you, I really did think that both fixtures had huge opportunity for both of these players. I just edged towards Harry Kane because of Southampton and their current struggles in the relegation battle. But I must admit that Arsenal have absolutely been flying in recent weeks. And of course, Saka again producing an assist and a goal for England on Sunday, which I just think the man is in the form of his life. So I think first things first, before we even talk about next week, I think if anybody's looking to potentially sell him ahead of that Leeds fixture, even though it's a single game week for Arsenal, I think he is one asset that I will certainly be holding on to. But more on that later. For the rest of my team, realistically, there's nothing to talk about here. Pretty much 2-pointers all around. We got an assist from Watkins. We got an assist from Maddison. But overall, a pretty disappointing week. I can't complain too much, though, to be honest with you. I'm definitely not going to cry wolf here because 91,000 is still well within my target of in terms of a finish this season. We've got 10 weeks to go. I've still got my bench boost and free hit chip remaining. And of course, we'll be talking all things chip usage as we progress through the video. So let's have a look, first of all, at my possible transfer plans. I've got two main routes that I'm looking at currently. I'm looking at a -8 and a -4. Now, the -8 does involve removing that man at the bottom there, Harry Kane. Now, he has been very, very consistent, which is why I'm a little bit reluctant to get rid of him. I may even keep him this game week as I am looking to activate the bench boost. And even though he's only got a single game week fixture, I still feel like there's a possibility that he could do some damage. And I think when you look at the possible upside of maybe transferring him out for someone like Isak, we've got to essentially try and hope that Kane might blank against Everton, which I can't realistically see happening. And then Isak, of course, to score a couple of goals here and there. Man United at home, absolutely, I can see him scoring there potentially. It depends how many minutes, I guess, he gets with Callum Wilson in the wings, but I do feel like he'll get the majority of the minutes across both matches. With Manchester United at home, no Casemiro, absolutely, yes, he can. I feel like he could score a goal there. West Ham away, well, we know what's happening with West Ham at the moment. They are certainly struggling, and Newcastle really do want to push for that Champions League place. So I can absolutely see this man being at the forefront of it, but is it worth that extra -4 and removing a very consistent player in Harry Kane is the decision I need to make ahead of deadline. As for the other two, though, with Gabriel and Odegaard moving themselves out and making way for Bruno Fernandes and Ben Chilwell, are two transfers I can really get behind for a -4, I think, this week. Now, it is worth noting that I do have my free hit chip in 32. So, of course, Manchester United, we know, are blanking. Chelsea are blanking in 32 as well. And that is maybe something to consider when you're looking at bringing players in this week. If you don't have any extra chips or a way to navigate that blank game week, I would absolutely recommend forward planning. So don't take this as advice for your team. This is just at the moment what I'm looking to do for mine. And I do think that Bruno and Ben's fixtures here are really, really good. I think the best case scenario for Ben Chilwell is he keeps at least one clean sheet across those two home fixtures and then maybe one attack in return. That would be absolutely phenomenal. I think Gabriel has equally got a great opportunity against Leeds to do some damage, and maybe the -4 will equal itself out across the kind of 3 games, as in Gabriel playing against Leeds and Ben Chilwell playing the other 2 games. Maybe it's not so necessary to remove him, but I've just seen a bit of a slip off in terms of defensive prowess from Arsenal recently, and I feel like now's the time to jump off of him and potentially go for someone that I can see a lot more attacking output from in Ben Chilwell. Odegaard as well is another individual that I've got a bit of value tied up in, as I bought him just post World Cup, or part of essentially my World Cup wild card, and I feel like now again is the time to maybe remove him and go for someone with a double game week fixture, and someone that I'm probably going to be looking to hold on to long term as well in Bruno Fernandes. So that's my -8. And as mentioned, really, we can just quickly see the graphic here for Route 2, where we don't actually sell Harry Kane and we just go in for Fernandes and Chilwell. So absolutely, those are, I think, my 2 options. I don't think I'll go any further here. There may be some planning between now and the deadline that changes that. But as of time of recording, I'm pretty confident that I'll go for one of those 2 options. So let me know in the comments below which one you prefer. And of course, any headaches you've got for transfers or possible tips and advice. Now, we'll go into the next section here. It's something I've not done before, but I'm just going to be talking about taking hits. Now, of course, ignore the graphic, I suppose, around it. It's just maybe a bit of jest that it's not algebra, right? It's really not that difficult to work out. But for any of you that still maybe can't wrap your head around, is it worth it or not? Just from a maths perspective, purely just the mathematical approach, this is how we can look at it, right? So it's a slightly different approach to removing a single game week player for a double game week player, as opposed to removing a blank game week player for a double game week player. Now, there was obviously, those scenarios did happen recently, and I made the argument that, of course, with a blank game week player, you are taking a -4, but the upside of that is you get an extra 2 fixtures as opposed to 0, and there is more opportunity within that -4, depending on the position of the player you've sold, to make up the ground. So here, just underneath, we've got to the 3 kind of questions that I would ask myself before looking at a minus specifically for each player. Now, the first 3 questions that I'd ask is, how likely are your transfer outs going to blank? Do you feel like the fixture isn't very favourable? Do you think it's difficult, therefore it's worth taking that hit and removing that player? Do you also have a look at their form as well? Maybe it's something to consider. And, without sort of spilling the beans here too much, I am directly talking about, I think, mostly Saka here. And that's because if you look at his international form, you look at what he's done recently for Arsenal as well, the fixture is also favourable against Leeds. I think he's the perfect example that where you could sell him to essentially try to optimise your team to have an extra double game week player when it's not necessarily that favourable, let's say. Of course, this is all just hypothetical. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. Every single step is outcome based, and we just don't know. But we can make a reasonable judgment based on the knowledge we do have, and that is that Saka is on form. It's a great fixture at home for Arsenal, and he's also on penalties, which I think tells me don't sell him. And that's the kind of thought process that I've gone through for him. I've also put in a remember section here that the actual cost of the -4 hit for a single game week player to a double game week player varies by position and outcomes. So we've taken an example of a midfielder. Now, we know that with a midfielder with no attacking returns, a clean sheet banked, and no card essentially equals 3 points, right? As long as they play the 60 minutes. That would mean the overall cost of the double game week is actually -1 because we've gained 3 points back. Where a single game week player midfielder would only score us 3 points maximum based on them blanking. You then also have with a double game week player that extra 3 points, meaning we only take, in effect, a possible -1, which is why you see a lot of content creators and a lot of people talking about taking the gamble when they remove a single game week player and then putting in a double game week. It's because you are effectively essentially enhancing your chances of an attacking return. And of course, then the final point there is that -1 is also based on your transfer out blanking. So again, we look at Saka as the example. Anybody who's selling him for a double game week up wants him to blank against Leeds. But what is the probability of that? Obviously, I haven't got all those statistics in front of me now, but I just wanted to talk through kind of the thought process and maybe the reasoning as to why some players are worth taking a hit for and some aren't. And this is all going to be team specific as well. So take it with a pinch of salt, but just in general, this is how I approach double game weeks when we're talking about removing single game week players. So hopefully that clears some things up for you. Hopefully that helps your thought process and your analysis on the transfers you need to make ahead of the game week. But feel free in the comments to let me know your dilemmas and your thoughts ahead of the week, guys. So let's move on to the next section now where we talk about fixtures. Of course, we've had the international break. Everything is wrapped up. Of course, it's going to be worth looking and watching out for those all-important yellow or red Doritos of death, as we like to call them in FPL. There could be plenty of news coming out of press conferences that may change your transfer plans. So I would still possibly wait an extra day or two here just to try and get as much news as possible once the players return to their respective Premier League clubs, and we can maybe get a bit more detail as to who and what the situation is with certain players, i.e. Rashford's flagged at 75%. I think Erling Haaland is flagged, of course, as well, although I think most people are probably looking at removing him. We've got Botman, I believe, as well, has been flagged now. So just a few things to take into consideration, I guess, when possibly looking at your transfer plan. So that's something to look at. I've also included a graphic here from our friend Ben Crellin in the community. He does that phenomenal work on spreadsheet format that gives us the full rundown of all of the fixtures, essentially the fixtures that have been scheduled for double game weeks, the fixtures that still need to be rearranged. And I think there's just a couple of things I want to talk about here that maybe, again, will not necessarily influence your transfers, but just food for thought. Now, you'll notice that I haven't mentioned Luke Shaw, for example, or a Manchester United defender in my possible transfers in. Now, that was one of my plans absolutely moving forward. But as you can see there in this graphic, you can see we have the double game week in game week 29. We then have Everton in game week 30. We then have, in between a Nottingham Forest game, we have the two-legged fixture in the Europa League against the current holders, Sevilla, which is going to be a very, very complex game, in my opinion. I think it's going to be very difficult to navigate. We've not beat them in the 3 times we've met them already in previous seasons. So I think Luke Shaw potentially becomes a little bit of a rotation risk there with Malacia waiting in the wings. We've also got the situation with Casemiro still having that domestic ban after receiving the straight red card. And I just feel like that potentially puts me off having a Manchester United defender. But anyway, that's Manchester United specifically. I'll keep the graphic here for you to essentially look at, and I'll also put the link to this spreadsheet in the description of the video. I think it's a really handy tool to use and help navigate all of the fixtures that they're not only Premier League focused, right? It just gives you a snapshot of when you're bringing in players, how risky are they potentially of rotation when they're still in the likes of the FA Cup, potentially some Europa competitions or of course Champions League as well. I just think it's an important graphic to refer to at all times when we look at future planning. So absolutely take this as an opportunity to look at your team and how it's set up over the next few weeks. And then finally, we can get into the grit, really, of game week 29. So here we are. I'm looking at, as I mentioned, activating my bench boost. So the reality is here, whichever player combination I use, it's not really relevant. I could play a number of combinations, but ultimately I'm going to have 15 scoring players this week. So nets all the way through to the strikers. Then nets, we've got Kepa showing up for me in goal as the starting 11. Again, we've got David Raya on the bench as well, though. So no headaches here. We're just going to be playing all 15 players. We've got Estepinian, we've got Trippier, we've got Henry, and we've got Chilwell. If I make that transfer from Gabriel to him, we can then look at my midfield here. The lineup being Rashford, Maddison, Bruno Fernandes, if I make that move from Odegaard to him, and Solly March as well. Finally, then we've got the front two of Ivan Toney and Ollie Watkins. And then, as we can see, the bench boost active, guys, for the 15 players here. That, as mentioned, Botman is currently flagged, as is Rashford, but I've got the armband on him currently. Of course, I'll be reviewing and checking if he's fit ahead of these 2 games. But I feel like this squad is absolutely phenomenal. I really think that this 15, although not all of the players are doubling, we've got Saka and Kane with some really positive fixtures. And it goes back to that same reasoning as mentioned with taking hits, that if I did remove Kane for an extra -4 for a double game week player in the likes of Isak or Havertz or someone of that ilk and cost, I'm just not certain that they will outscore Harry Kane this week. And I feel like holding on to him maybe for 1 or 2 more weeks may prove beneficial. I do feel like longer term, though, I will probably remove him, free up some money maybe for a Mohamed Salah or maybe somebody else in terms of a double game week player later on in the season, as we know Spurs don't have any double game weeks. So that's kind of the position that I'm in with Harry Kane. As for Saka, again, I used him as the example that I definitely would not recommend selling him, so I'm not going to be looking at removing him. The big question, I suppose, remains is this bench boost going to be better than the possible Game Week 27 bench boost? It's really hard to tell. I mean, we do have obviously a few extra fixtures in here in comparison to the Game Week 27 one. I think I would have scored around 27, 28 points in the Game Week 27 bench. Do I feel like this bench could equal that? I do. I feel like it could equal it. Will it excel it though? I'm not so sure, but time will tell, guys. Of course, let me know your thoughts below on, like I say, transfer dilemmas, where your head's at for chip usage and obviously all future plans. In terms of captaincy, as I touched on, it will be Marcus Rashford, I feel like, just tipping it slightly ahead of Bruno Fernandes. Although if we do get news that Rashford will have any inkling or any type of reduced minutes across these 2 fixtures, then I absolutely can see myself putting the armband on that Portuguese Magnifico. But again, guys, let me know in the comments what your dilemmas are. Let me know what your thoughts are about this bench boost and if I can optimize it even more. Love to hear your thoughts as always, guys. But thanks very much for tuning in. Really appreciate the support. And of course, it's just been continuous again. I mean, I've been kind of on a break, I suppose you could say, alongside the international break because my full-time job has wrapped up so much of my time of late, but you're still there, you're still supporting me, so thank you very much for that. If you are new to the channel and this is the first time checking me out, then do feel free to subscribe to the channel. It is completely free. There'll be plenty more content to come before now and the end of the season, and plenty of pre-season content as well to help you on your way for the next season. So thanks again for watching, guys. Really appreciate the support, and I will see you in another video very, very soon. Take care.